Hi everyone. I trust you're all well. It's lovely to see so many of you in, and it's that time of the week again. It's Friday. We're back live with Keyboard World, and I'm really pleased to say that we've got my very good colleague Andy with me this afternoon. He's hassling me in the corner at the moment. So yeah, greetings from wherever you all are. Oh, there's a question. Can we have the name of where Paul's been? I haven't been anywhere.
Have you been anywhere?
Oh, I don't think I've been anywhere. Yeah, I did go shopping the other. But anyway, if you want to elaborate on that, I'm more than happy to answer. Look, we've got a little bit of a mixed bag for you today because I want to start with just a couple of things that came to light after the last two webinars. So I just want to clear a couple of things up. So if you joined us for the Korg and the Genos one last time, we've talked about various things. One of them was how to bring a sound in using the volume pedal. And we did that on the Korg, and we talked about velocity on the Korg. So let's pop the overhead on for you. There we go. We talked about being able to bring different sounds in depending on the velocity of which we actually struck the keys. I don't know whether you remember, we brought some sort of brass sounds in and that. And there was a question at the time, could you do this on Genos? Well, I've had a search all round the keyboard. Honestly, it doesn't have the velocity option. But what I didn't show you last time, and I apologise profusely for that, is that you can, of course, still do it with a volume pedal. Now, I've got Genos 2 here. I have a volume pedal connected. And all you need to do to activate this is go into Menu. And in Menu 1, we have a button called Assignable. And it tells me what my three foot pedals are doing. So I'm just going to highlight the one that says volume. And lo and behold, down at the bottom here, we have a row of tick boxes. So as you can see, I've got all sections. I don't want the style being affected by the volume pedal, but I've got all three right sections here, but right one is not ticked. That means right one will not be affected by the volume pedal, whereas right 2 and right 3 will be. So if we close this down and just go back to our main screen here, you can probably see in right 1 I've got a piano, and in right 2 I've got a voice called strings pad. Now, underneath my desk here I have my volume pedal, and the volume pedal is pulled right back at the minute. So in other words, in theory the volume is off. But because the piano is not being affected by the volume pedal, we still have the volume of our piano. But you can't hear the strings because the strings are affected by the volume pedal. So what I'm going to do is just play a few chords, and slowly but surely I'm going to start pushing the expression pedal down, and that will bring the volume of the strings up gradually. So there's piano only. Now I'm going to start to bring the strings in. Take the volume pedal back off, and we can finish back on piano. So just the same way as we did on the Korg, and that, I think, confirms what I was saying. A volume pedal for me is a really, really important bit of equipment for a keyboard player. So I hope that's cleared that up. And the other one quickly before we get into today's content, I've had quite a few questions in about the section where I showed you where you could take bits from individual styles and sort of mix them together. And I'm going to call this mix and match, because if you think about all the hundreds of styles you've got in, whether it's Genos or Korg, what you've actually got are thousands of little MIDI files, because every part of every style is a 4 or an 8 or a 16 bar MIDI file. So what we can do here is we can take our little guitar part from one style and put it in another style. And I thought of a really good example just to show you as to how effective this can be. I'm going to choose as my main style ethereal movie. Now that's a free play style. It would be called just a freestyle on the Korg. So in other words, there's no rhythmic element to it. To be quite honest, you could almost play out of time. It doesn't matter. The only time the timing really matters on these sort of styles is where you use breaks or endings, because if you sort of press the break and you're on beat 2 or something, you're only going to get a short break. So there is a necessity to be slightly in time, but you can get away without it. So ethereal movie. Let's just have a listen to the style to start with. Let's start it up. Oh, I haven't got the where are we? Excuse me 1 second. I've done something. I did this last week, didn't I? There we go. Let's try that. So there's our ethereal movie style. We go through the variations. Now, I don't need to do it today for you, but if you remember, I said if you look in the style part of the mixer and you go through all the variations, you'll actually see via the lights that there are no drum tracks on there at all. And the other thing to listen to is the bass line. It's not a traditional bass. It's more like a sort of drone. It's a fantastic style, but how could I convert that into a more standard style? Well, if you remember, we go into menu and we want to be on menu 2 and we go into the style creator. And the section you want is called assembly. It's on a little tab down the side here. Now what I'm going to do, this has got no drums in it, but I'm going to add drums. And I'm going to change that bass into what we would all recognise as a more sort of standard bass with an actual bass pattern and maybe a sort of bass guitar, as opposed to that sort of droned string sound. So what I do is I go to rhythm 2 and I press it. And I tell the instrument, where do I want to pinch rhythm 2 from? Well, I'm going to go to unplugged ballad. Exit. So the rhythm 2 from unplugged ballad is now in my ethereal movie. I'm going to do exactly the same with the bass. I'm going to go to the pop category, unplugged ballad, and there we go. Now that was on variation C. Just bear with me while I do that in all the other variations. So we're going to go to pop, put unplugged ballad, and exactly the same for the bass. I'm going to go to pop and unplugged ballad, etc. Go to variation B, and I'm going to take the rhythm. Guess where from? Unplugged ballad. There we go. And I'm going to take the bass also from unplugged ballad. Bear with me, we've only got one more variation to go. Go on to D, and we're going to take the drums once more from unplugged ballad. I could have taken them from a different ballad, but I'm just sticking with the same one for now. And we go and took the bass from unplugged ballad. So now as I look through all these 4 variations, it's clearly telling me that rhythm 2 is from unplugged ballad, so is the bass, but the rest of the style is the original style. We can now audition it. Let's go to one of the higher variations. And that's great. We've actually converted that ethereal style into something which would be really usable now for loads of ballads. Having that proper bass line helps. All we need to do then, if we're happy with it, we go to save, press save here. I'll call it Ethereal Movie 1. As I always say, I'm sure you'll be more imaginative than me, but there we go. We'll exit out of that. So we've got this new style now, and here it goes. And we've created a totally new style. So I hope that's cleared up, because I had a lot of questions about that. If any of you subscribe to the magazine, I've done a couple of videos to reinforce it even more in there, because that is a brilliant feature. And the reason it's a brilliant feature, you don't have to be a programmer, you don't even have to be a keyboard player to create a brand new style. So there's a couple of things on Genos specifically. We're here today to encourage you to try and push that playing a little bit further. We've just been discussing this before we came on live, and it's quite interesting these days how dominant the technology has become against the actual playing, because there are always more people on a webinar if you're going to show them how to press buttons than actually if you're going to show them how to play it. And I find that a little bit confusing myself, because I when we both started, the hobby was playing. We only had a few buttons to sort of press, and they all sounded the same anyway, but we had a great time, and all the effort went into learning to play. So we're going to show you some little tricks today. What I am going to say to you is please, please, please go away and try these, because they will help you in so many ways. So I'm going to hand over. I will be back for the last sort of 35, 40 minutes, but I'm going to leave you for half an hour or so with Andy, and he's going to take you through some bits and pieces. I'll see you very, very soon.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much indeed. Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're all well. Hope you're feeling better than I am. I'm just in the tail end of a cold, so I'm going to start with an apology. If I start coughing and spluttering halfway through, you probably heard me in the background there, actually doing some coughing and spluttering while Paul was on. So I do apologise for that, but we'll try and get through as well as we can. What I'm going to talk about today, we talk a lot about these things in keyboard world, which is about creativity. And actually not just playing what the sheet music says, actually adding some original new bits that can make something your own, a piece of music your own, rather than just what's written. We've talked a lot about chord progressions, and we're going to talk a bit more today about chord progressions, but we're also going to talk about how to make the right hand a little bit more interesting, how to make up your own introductions. Why would you want to do that? I can hear you all shouting actually at home. Well, I've got the keyboard, it does all the introductions for me, and of course it does, and they're very, very good. There's no doubt about that. But if we only use the automatic introductions and the automatic endings, frankly, sooner or later, we're all going to start sounding a bit the same. And the intros and endings are really, really exciting when we first get a keyboard at home and we start playing with, oh, that's great, that's brilliant, that's brilliant. Think 2 or 3 years down the line when you've had your keyboard at home for that length of time, and maybe perhaps this is a bit strong, but you might be getting a little bit bored of the introductions and the endings that are built inside the keyboard. And we're going to talk about some ways that you can actually make your own introductions and endings, and even some chord progressions and some tricks where you can actually perhaps even make up your own little melodies if that's what you wanted to do. So I'm just going to use a simple chord progression, okay? I'm going to keep this as simple as we possibly can. And it's only got 4 chords, and it's split over 4 bars. Those chords, now I'm going to do them with my right hand. I could do them with, shall I do them with, I'll do them with my left hand for now. Those 4 chords, and they're 1 bar each, adding up to the 4 bars, are A minor. Now, if you don't know A minor, it's A, C, and E. Okay, so that's A minor. A, C, and E. And then we move to an F chord, and I'm just going to do what's known as root positions. If you've seen us talk about inversions, which we have done an awful lot, I'm going to just use root position where the F is at the bottom. You see my A is at the bottom of the chord here, so this is a root position A minor chord. I'm going to put the F down there. That's an F chord. Something to notice, there's 2 shared notes there. So let me go back to the A minor. You see I've got an A and a C. And if I go to F, I just remove that and press the F. So we've got those 2 shared notes. The 3rd chord is G. Nice and easy, nice and straightforward. And the last chord is probably the most difficult out of the 4, but it's not really so bad. And that's an E7 chord. Okay? Now, if you can't play an E7, you could just play an E. But I'm going to play an E7, that's an E chord, with the D added at the top there. Okay? Now that chord progression, if you want it to, can go round and round and round, because that E7 automatically pushes you back to A minor. It's got that sound which pushes you back. So let's just do all of those, join them up. So here's an A minor for 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, F, G, 1, 2, 3, E7. And you perhaps notice there's some shared notes between the G, because I've got the B and the D there, to E7. And I've got E, G sharp, and B and D again at the top. Fine. So that's all the chords we're going to use today. That's all I'm going to be using. Those 4, A minor, 2, 3, 4, F, 2, G. You've got the idea, I'm sure. 3, 4, E7, and then we can go back to the A minor, or we can just finish on the A minor. Okay, I've prepared some dots, some music. Right, I've got to press button 4 apparently, haven't I, Paul? Is that right? Here we go, button 4. Hopefully, like magic, the music appears there to the right-hand side. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, Paul, but people can download this music at the...
in the text under the YouTube video.
Okay, in the text under the YouTube video,
Is a link
there'll be a link
to all the exercises we're doing today.
to all the exercises we're doing today. And I'm just repeating what he's saying, so hopefully he's right. Okay, so there's some examples. I've written out here 5 examples of something that can make up an introduction. Okay, you've probably heard, and I do this a lot, and I do this so you can hear it clearer. We'll use some styles in that moment, but just for now, for you to hear it clearer, I'm just using a piano sound. So all I'm going to do with my left hand is play an octave. Perhaps there, actually. That's better. An octave. That's the A. And I'm going to play in example 1 here, 4 beats on the A minor chord. Yeah? Now you can even really simplify it and just hold it once if you wanted to, but that's really simple. So let's just play 4 beats. 1, 2, now to the F chord. 2, and now to the G chord. Now to the E7 chord. And now to the A minor just to finish. Or I could go round again if that's actually what I wanted to do. You can do that. So that's the basis of our own introduction. Now then, we've talked about a couple of subjects. We've talked about chord notes. And this is where we're going next. And example 2 on this sheet here is really quite straightforward. The final beat and a half of each bar is just chord notes that we're going to run up. Let me explain what I mean by that. Let's look at this first, the first bar, the A minor here. We've got two crotchets, 1, 2, and then we go 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3 and 4 and all I'm doing is running up the chord notes. Yeah? A minor is the A minor notes. F is the F notes. If I do it properly. G notes. E notes. So we put all that together, just an octave again down here. Now, a couple of things just to watch out for there, mainly revolving around this E7 chord. The E7 chord is slightly different because we have 4 notes in there. It's a 4-note chord. So just at the end there, we're only running up the top 3 notes. Because if we tried to run up all 4, we'd be out of time. We could run up all 4 by going 1, 2, 3 and 4 and... We could do it that way. That's another way of doing it. And what I've just done there is a really, really major point about this system. There is a myriad of different... That's a big word. Crikey. A myriad of different ways that you can do these things. I've got 5 examples here. I could probably write out 50 different examples. And that's where we're going to be heading in just a moment. But I've just written here that we do, on that third beat of the E7 chord, we do the chord and then we run up G sharp, B, D to the A. So example 2. Okay, so we're just separating out the chord notes there. Example 3, we're doing something a little bit different, which actually is simply mixing the root position inversions with some different inversions. So here we go. Here's the first bar of example 3. We've got 2 A minors that we've been doing. And then I'm just going to move the A to the top of the chord. And then go back down again. So we're going F, move the F to the top of the chord, G, move the G to the top of the chord. Now the E7 again is slightly different, 2 the same, and just move the top note up. So that, example 3 now, all together, is this. It's all that same simple, straightforward 4-chord progression, A minor, F, G and E7. But we're just starting to change things a little bit, make it a bit more interesting. An example 4, now we're using a touch of both of the techniques we've just used. Let's take the A minor here. We're doing 2 A minors, as we've done. We're doing the octave above, then 2 notes, which are just chord notes, F, Now I'm sure you'll all agree that by the time we get to example 4, we've got a much more interesting introduction than example 1, yeah, which is just strumming the the 4 beats. Nothing wrong with example 1, but it's just a very simple and not so sophisticated way of doing it. Now, what can we do with this? Before we get to example 5, because we're going to introduce lots of new things into example 5, this could be the introduction to any piece of A minor music in 4/4 time. Doesn't matter. It's now look, I'm going to do the same for the ending. And that's, at the ending there, I'm just literally running up the notes of A minor. So these can be intros, they can also be endings. Now then, example 5. We're going to do something different with example 5, somewhere we've perhaps never been before with in these sort of sessions, which is not just using chord notes. The chord notes are still very important. In fact, they are the most important element of this. But what we're now going to do is we're going to add some notes from the A minor scale to support and make those chord notes even more interesting. Now, in the latest edition of the Keyboard World magazine, there is an article written by me, which talks about relative minor scales and all sorts of things. Without going into any great depth, the scale of A minor, the natural scale of A minor, is just the white notes, like a C major scale, but beginning on the note of A. So the scale of A minor, natural, is this. Slightly strange sounding thing, but that's what it is. Okay. Now, in theory, I can add any of those notes to any of the chords that I'm playing with my left hand or with my right hand. So to the A minor chord, I can add some connecting notes from the A minor scale. Now, I've done that in example 5, but there's a few things we need to cover first. The chord notes are still the most important. And we're going to make up some little musical phrases in a moment, and they always start on a chord note. It can be any one of the chord notes, but they always start on a chord note. And we may go through some notes from the scale, but they always end on a chord note. Now, I've done a very simple one here in example 5. Let's just look at this. What we're doing here is I'm using just a D note in the first bar. So we're doing 3 beats on the A minor chord, and then we're doing 2 quavers, but I'm using this D note. Now that's pinched from the A minor scale. It's there. It's the 4th note of the scale. So I'm doing this. And I'm going to use the B note from the A minor scale. There it is. And the C note from the A minor scale. So that all together sounds like this. Got the little D note, B note, a C note, now this is where it gets a little bit exciting, perhaps a little more intricate, but I can use any of those scale notes Some will work better than others, there's no doubt about it, and some will work better than others with different chords. But you can experiment, you can try and get creative on your keyboard at home. So I'm just going to improvise now, and I'm thinking, well, I've got the scale of A minor natural. I've got an A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. Okay. So let me do an A minor. And I'm putting a B note in now instead of that D. I'm going to use a D note. And I'm using a different G inversion. Now, what starts to happen now is that instead of it sounding like a chord progression, it starts to sound more melodic, like a tune, like a melody. And in fact, if we want to, especially when we use a style, which we're going to do in just a moment, we can start just using perhaps more single notes here, and we can make up our own little tune for an introduction. Sort of like this. This won't sound quite so convincing at the moment. Let me just play the chords here with my left hand instead of the octave. So I'm going to do this. So all I was doing there, and you just sort of think, hey, where's all that come from? They're just notes from the scale put into little motifs, a little fraction of a tune, a little riff. Maybe this is a motif. Okay, there's a little riff. So I'm starting on my A from the A minor chord. And I'm finishing on my E. Remember, you've got to start on a chord note and finish on a chord note. Now I can do the same little riff on the F. I'm going to start here. Starting on the chord note, finishing on the chord note. Start on a chord note with G. When you get to the end of the piece, so again, we're using that as an introduction and an ending, but actually using those scale notes and the chord notes are the most important, to actually build up something melodic, a bit more interesting. So, okay, that leads on then. Perhaps you could actually write your own little tune using this system. And guess what? Yes, you can. Okay, so I'm going to use this start on a chord note, end on a chord note, but mix some scale notes in between. Okay, same 4 chords, so we can do this. I'm just sort of improvising now. there is just something to be aware of there. You perhaps notice when I'm playing the E7 chord, I play a G sharp note in the right hand, sometimes. Now, those observant ones amongst you at home will have noticed that in the A minor scale, there's no G sharp. There's a G, but there's not a G sharp. And this is where your chord note overrides the scale note. Because you're playing a G sharp in your chord, you need to play a G sharp in your right hand. Equally, when you play the G chord, which has got a G natural in it, you have to play a G natural here. Okay? So even though that G sharp is not in A minor, it is in the chord you're playing, and that overrides it. Okay? Because if you play a G sharp with a G chord, it's going to sound terrible. It sounds dreadful. Not good. And if you play a G natural with an E7 chord, well, it's not as bad. It's technically something called a flattened 10th, believe it or not, or a sharp 9th. But it's very jazzy. And in isolation, like I'm playing it now, doesn't sound very good at all. It can sound okay if you play it like this. But even then, it's controversial. It's a bit dissonant. It's a bit clashy. But technically, you can use it. But I want it in a romantic piece of music. If you're playing the theme from Love Story, you don't want it to be dissonant. If you're playing something jazzy, you might want that. So E7 becomes G sharp, G chord. You play a G natural because it will work. So let's now use a style. I hope I'm doing this right, Paul, because I'm not sure on Genos, but I hope I'm doing this right. Here's just a little style here. Here's the 4 chords. F chord, G7, E7. And if you want to, you can just use this as your introduction. It sort of works. F chord, G chord, E7. That's not what we're talking about. Let's do something now with the right hand. I'm just to start with going to use example 4 because that's quite a nice one. All chord notes. There's nothing to do with the scale in example 4, but let's just do that now like this. It as an ending. You get the idea. Now, let's do the more advanced one. I'm going to make up a little melody, and I'm using the chord notes as the basis, and then some scale notes just to support them. So let's do that. So, hopefully, that gives you a few hints and tips. Pick a nice four-bar sequence. We've talked about lots of different four-bar sequences. There's one for you there, A minor, F, G, E7. It's an A minor introduction, an A minor ending. Could even be the basis of a little A minor melody. And there's just a few ideas of all the different variations that you can use, those chord notes and those scale notes to help make an original introduction or an ending. Right, well, that's it from me. I didn't cough once. That was very good.
Yeah, well done.
That was good. So I'm now going to pass you back to the leg end. Have you noticed he's got a new haircut, by the way? I don't know whether you've noticed that. I'm going to pass you back to Mr. Carmen. Thank you very much indeed. Have a lovely afternoon.
Thanks, Andy. Thank you. There we go. I think there's a spot of jealousy there because I've actually got some hair left to cut. But I will discuss the matter with him later. Do you know what? Look, I've sat and listened to that. Somebody's asking, is today Genos or any chord? No, today is not any instrument. It's about some playing ideas, unfortunately. So, but yeah, we're going to have another webinar, by the way, next Friday. Don't know what it will be yet, but I will advertise it probably over the weekend. The following week, fingers crossed and all being equal, I'll be back out in Spain. And then we have some exciting news for the 21st of February. Been having a long chat on the phone yesterday with Adam Whittle. Now, many of you from the UK will know Adam from his time at Korg. There is nobody more enthusiastic, I promise you, about keyboard products than Adam. He currently heads up Scan, which is a huge company over here. They've got a brand new keyboard division, and they do Korg, they do Yamaha, they do Ketron. He's been down with us before with the Ketron. But on the 21st of February, he's coming down to do a live webinar with me. And we're going to call it The Hidden Secrets of the Korg PA5X. And so really, really looking forward to that one. And we've got some great ideas to work together. So, Andy, you better watch these sly comments because, there is another member of staff coming along. I just like to wind him up, that's all. No, really looking forward to that one. So that's a date for your diary. That's the 21st of February, which is a Friday as our regular time. And yeah, somebody said looking forward to the 1.4.0. As soon as we've got that, me and Adam are going to do another webinar straight the way to take you through the update. But look, I'm going to go back to what I said at the beginning and what I was about to say through listening to Andy. It always amazes me that people have more of a thirst for learning what buttons do than doing the actual playing themselves. And just sitting back and listening to what Andy's doing, a lot of people ask me, do you play at home? And of course the answer is yes, but I don't tend to sit and play tunes. I probably do exactly what Andy's just done, is I will come into the office or I'll sit at the piano in the house and I'll just pick 4 chords that go well together. And I could probably spend half an hour or 40 minutes enjoying myself just as much experimenting and doing different ideas with those chords as I do if I'm going to sit down and say, yeah, I'm going to play Misty. I can get just as much pleasure. And the other really important thing, Andy's done a lot of piano there, and I'm going to do in piano style, but then we're going to put a style on like Andy did. And I can hear some of you potentially commenting, but hang on, we play a range of keyboards and we hold chords. If you want your playing to improve, there is nothing better, I'll repeat that, there is nothing better than doing some of these piano exercises. Even if you're not ultimately playing in piano style, the coordination, the finger dexterity, all those things will really, really help you, even just smoothing out your chord changes and things like that. And Andy mentioned inversions, being able to see inversions. And although we've called these exercises, I don't like to think of them as exercises because Andy got it absolutely spot on. These are little pieces of music in their own right, and honestly, they can be just as much fun. I want to start just as a little extension from what Andy's done, and it's a similar chord sequence. So let me just go back to just the piano for a minute. I haven't got any dots for this one because this is a bit more spontaneous, this bit. So we've got a C chord. We're then going to go to A minor. We're then going to go to D minor. And we're going to go to G7. And I suppose really we're starting where Andy started, just basically holding chords. And you can either do them all in their root position or you can mix and match the inversions. But this is the sequence: C, A minor, D minor, G7. You will have all played that sequence a million times over because it appears in so many tunes. It's a very, very common chord sequence. But doing it like I've doing, where's the inspiration? Both for me, the player, and anybody listening. Let's put into practice two things that we learnt last year. At least I hope you learnt them last year. I'm testing you now. One is to put a couple of passing chords in, and that is we can either do what we call a 5-1, and I'm not going to go over the whole thing again, but look, C, our target next chord is A minor. All you do is count 5 up from that chord note, and it takes us to E. Actually, Andy's already covered this. E7 naturally resolves to A minor. Have a listen. It's a sort of natural resolve. And a 7th chord always is waiting to go somewhere. And where it's going is that A minor. So the first thing that tells me is I could play C. Then I could put an E7 in to take me to the A minor. Already put a smile on my face because it's different and it's more exciting, it's more musical. Then our next chord is D minor. And we taught you something last year, both on webinars and in the magazine. You can do what they call a diminished 7th passing chord. Don't get bamboozled by the terminology. It's dead simple. We're going to a D type of chord. We drop down a semitone, takes us to C sharp. So C sharp diminished 7th will take us to D minor. And then we probably don't have to do it every time. We just go to the G7. So let's just put that together in its basic form. So we've got C, E7, A minor, C sharp diminished, D minor 7 or D minor. Now, I don't know about you, but that's an amazing transition from just doing yeah, and then we just put those 2 extra chords in. Okay. We can do other things. Andy said it, and it looks like we've prepared this. We haven't actually. Andy goes off and does his thing, and he said, "Paul, I'm doing this week." I don't know whether we're telepathic or what, but we seem to come up with similar things. And Andy's been talking to you about, breaking your chord up a little bit. We've got the classic sort of rocking the chord, where you play the top 2 notes and you keep rocking down to the bottom chord. At the bottom note, rather. So you go. Let's try and do that and put the extra chords in. We're really getting somewhere now. The final thing, this is something else we've taught you before, and again, I'm going to stress here, we're looking at one note different from the basic triad or the 4-note chord that we've played. There's our C chord. Remember, we've talked about this magical 9th note so many times. Why do we keep going on about it? Because it keeps appearing, and you're listening to professional musicians use it all the time. So what we could do is this. So we're doing that rocking movement, but we're adding that 9th note in. Let's try that on some of the chords. Just listen how beautiful that A minor has become by putting that 9th, or we can also think of it as the 2nd note. It's the note up from the root note. Just listen to an ordinary A minor. So there's our C. Then we go to A minor. But if I put that 9th note in, listen how special it starts to sound. I've changed to F chord this time instead of D minor. It doesn't matter. But immediately there, we've got 3 or 4 variations. You don't even have to do the rocking. Let's do what Andy did. Let's play these as individual notes. So let's put a style on, because let's assume many of you will sit and use a style. So we're... So what I'm going to do, or what I just did there, was put some additional notes in. I'm using this 9th note as a sort of passing note, really. So instead of just running up a C chord, we're putting that... It's just a more professional sound. Into the tune. We're just throwing ideas at you today, but we're also wanting you to listen to the difference it makes if you just make that little bit of effort. There is one final one, and then I'm going to show you 2 little exercises to finish with, which I think are beautiful just to sit and play. We can also look at that as a suspended 2nd chord. You might have seen sus2 written as a chord, and that's what's putting that 2nd or that 9th note in. Me and Andy last year talked about another chord, which is a sus4. And there you take the 3rd note out and you put the next note above it, the 4th note. So there's yet another alternative. So when we go down to the A minor, we can put the D in. Sorry, I'm a chord ahead of myself. Put the D in and then back to the A minor. It'll always resolve to the actual chord that you intended to play in the first place. So D minor, instead of playing that, we're going to put the G at the top. Crossing the split point here, but so let's just do that one for you. And what I'm going to do is mix them together. So some will be the suspended 2, and I think we'll leave the D minor as the suspended 4. So let's have a listen. And there you go. So it's one... We've said this before, often the name or the terminology is actually more daunting than the actual doing of the task. So most of you can play a C triad, drop the 3rd note down to the note below, and you've got your suspended chord. And move that middle note up one, and you've got your sus4 chord as well. And they're all making that simple and overused chord sequence sound really, really interesting. Okay, now back to the bit where we've actually got some music scores up. This next one, that was Andy's. This next one, now, I make no bones here, this is not easy. But if you can actually master this, and I'm going to show you how to do it with two hands and how to do it just with your left hand, what I'm going to reiterate is what I said right at the beginning. Yeah, you may never play piano, but if you can do this type of exercise, it will 100% improve your chord changes, the smoothness with which you make your chord changes. It'll help your timing as well, because in Andy's piece and in the one I've just shown you, sometimes the left hand might be playing 2-beat, minims, and the right hand might be playing crotchets or quavers. And it's this coordination and the finger dexterity that we're working on all the time. So this is a little exercise. I'm going to show you it just with the left hand to start with. Now, if you can't read that first note, I'll give you a clue. It's always the root note. It's well off the stave, but this is what we're actually doing. It's a really pretty little pattern. What we've done is taken an A minor in its root position. I've took the middle note out and thrown that an octave above. Now, I don't expect you to stretch that, because what you actually do is you roll your hand across to it. And then we use the E that we came off as like a pivot note that we keep going back to. And look what note we put in. It's that magical 9th note again, or the second note. So, now once you've mastered that, the next 2 bars are easy, because the hand position remains the same. We just drop down 1 note. And that takes us to a G chord with the 9th of the G scale in. And guess what? We go down once more to F. Again with that 9th note in. Here's the tricky one. We've got an E. So we go to E chord, which would have the G sharp in the middle. We put that G sharp at the top. But if you look on the piece of music, we have to put the F sharp in because of the scale of E. And then we drop down to the E. So the E is this one. So let's put all those together. We'll just do 1 bar of each. And just like Andy's before, do you remember E or E7? But even E will take you back to A minor. That on its own is brilliant practice. It won't happen in 5 minutes. Even I'm having to concentrate and think about it. But what if we just did the simplest thing and just put the root note at the top and just played a little tune like this? Let's pick a different note from each chord. So I'm going to start on the C of the A minor. And the more you master it, the slightly more adventurous you can be. Now, if you can't manage that with your left hand, that very first note, just play it with your left hand and do the little rocking between the notes with your right hand. So like this. Or you could, once again, like we did before, let's just use a style. So we've got A minor, going down to G, to F, and to E. And now let's put our little phrase in. And we're into our piece in A minor. So that is I think that's a pretty little thing just to sit and play as a piece of music. Yes, it's only 4 bars long. You can soon extend that. You could make every bar into 2 bars. So you could do 2 bars on A minor, 2 bars on G, 2 bars on F, 2 bars on E. You can try different things on the right hand. You could try it once just on piano, then bring a style in. This is what I'm trying to say. I will spend probably 3/4 of an hour sitting at home and I will wring every single thing I possibly can out of those 4 bars. Yeah, I am using. We've both been using a sustain pedal when you're doing this sort of piano type thing, to try and do what I was doing with the left hand. Let's just put it back on piano. It sounds a bit stilted because I'm not getting that lingering between one note and another. So once you put the sustain pedal on. And it enables me to do that roll up to the C, and that E is still playing. So really, really important there. Yeah, things like this, to me, I just love it. I can do this sort of thing all the time. You can use it as an intro, as Andy said. You can use it as an ending. You could make up your own piece of music again. You know, it's there. Let's do one more. So let's go on to here. Now, this is another one. I think this is so pretty. Yes, it's an exercise, but I never think of them as exercises. I treat these like pieces of music. This is C minor. The right hand is not the difficult bit on this, and there is a descending bass line, which is a common musical thing again, musical practice. I'm going to take C minor, and if you play it in its root position, it's C, E flat, and G. Have a guess. This is getting repetitive now. Have a guess which note I'm going to add to make this sound special. Would it be the 9th? Yes, it would be the 9th. Yeah, I mean, we're joking about this, and I know people must get fed up with me and Andy keep going over the same thing, but actually, I hope, even off just today, you're starting to see how important these things can be. So look, I'm going to play this inversion, G, C, E flat, and I need that 9th note in, the D. We're not going to play them all together like that, so don't worry, because that sounds a bit discordant. We're actually going to start on that 9th note, and we've got a C in our left hand, the root note. So that's our little phrase. It goes D, E flat, C, G. Then we shoot up to the G. Then we go to F. Guess what F is? That's that 4th note. Then the 3rd, and then back to that magic 9th again. So the 2 suspended notes that we used in our chords earlier, the 4th and the 2nd, actually appear in our little run here as well. So let's just do that again. And then we start again. So we repeat the D. And we do it again. And believe it or not, we do it again. Now that's nice, but it's not interesting. What's really going to make it interesting is what we do with the left hand. And we're going from C down to B flat, to A flat, to F, and to G. Now, I don't want to get over technical here, but Andy started to talk about relative minors. C minor is the relative minor of E flat. An E flat scale has 3 flats in it, which is why we put the B flat and the A flat in our rundown. So let me do it, and then we'll break it down a little bit further. Now, the only thing we did different was in the very last bar, the F and the G bass are only 2 beats each. In every other bar, we're just holding the bass note for all 4 beats of the bar. Now, we've done it on piano. I could hear that sounding lovely on something like a classical guitar sound, like this. I think that's lovely. And I hope you all think the same. If you're struggling, what can we do? We can turn to our style again. So instead of piano, let's stick with that guitar, because I really liked that guitar sound. So what are we going to play as chords? Because we're not doing a single note descending bass. But where that bass goes to B flat, I'm actually going to try playing a B flat chord. And where it goes to A flat, I'm going to play an A flat chord. When I go to F, I'm actually going to play an F minor. And then we'll go back to G. Let's just see if it works. It did work, didn't it? Yeah. I hadn't tried that before, but yeah. So what we're doing, we're taking the bass note as our guide for the chord. So C, then we went to B flat. You maybe want to scribble that on if you download the piece of music. Bar 3 is an A flat. I decided to do an F minor rather than an F major, and purely because, I don't know, it just sounded better. And then go to the G7. And that can take you back round again. Do you all know the piece by James Last, The Lonely Shepherd? There's a similar intro in that. James Last did this one, I think. Which is a C minor. I think he wrote it in D minor originally, but we'll stick in C minor. And guess what it's got in it? It's got the 9th. And it's got the 4th in it. What if I took that pattern, the James Last pattern, but put our bass line to it? Would it work? I honestly don't know whether it will, but I think it will. Do you know what? I'm impressing myself here today. Genuinely, this is the sort of thing I will sit for hours and do. And you may never play this in any piece exactly as it's written. But the more you do things like this, it should start sparking ideas, exactly like it did with me there, to say, well, okay, we've written a little pattern, but that's really similar to the James Last one. What if I mix the two together? Things like that can work. So there you go. I will repeat if there's any latecomers. In the text on YouTube below the video is a link that will take you to my Dropbox account, and you'll be able to download the 3 little scores that we've put up there today. Just a reminder, there will be a webinar next Friday. As I said, I'm not quite sure what the content will be yet, but it'll be back to instrument based. I really hope you don't mind from time to time that we do this type of webinar. We mustn't, any of us, lose sight of the fact that we're learning to play an instrument. And the more interesting that you can make it sound, I promise you, the more you will want to do more and more of these things. You get a thirst for it. And I think I speak for Andy, when we're sort of thinking of ideas for these webinars, it actually makes us refresh things and come back to things that we probably haven't done for years as well. So all in all, it's good. I hope we've kept it at a level where most of you can have a go at it. I look forward to seeing you next Friday. Andy won't be with us next Friday, but then remember, February the 21st, I will advertise it, where we've got this special one with Scan and our special guest Adam Whittle, who'll be coming down, and hopefully that is something which will continue throughout the year as well. All that remains is, on behalf of myself and my partner in crime, Mr. Carville, who's over there coughing away in the corner. Yeah, we look forward to seeing you very soon. Thanks, as always, for your support, and bye for now.